to Crypto Clothesline. We're glad to be here with you. Hanging out the crypto laundry. Getting all the crypto info for you. Crypto Clothesline. Crypto Clothesline.
Hi, Amy Rose.
Hello.
How's your lawnmower going? That guy that always loves to come when we're recording podcasts.
He's MIA. He quit. He still owes me. I paid him in advance for like a month, and he hasn't been. And my lawn was pretty bad, just saying. It was pretty overgrown because I was hoping he'd come back. But anyway.
We did mention in a previous podcast the insemination of socks, my children's included, all through the backyard. So do you think it was a sock protest?
Look, I do lose a lot of socks, and I'm assuming maybe 1 or 2, 3, 10 might be around the trampoline. But come on, like, the mower can cut through that sort of thing, can't it?
Maybe he had to go and buy 3 new mower engines because they'd been doing so much sock processing.
But still, he could just call me and say, "Oh, darling Amy Rose, I do love your lawn. I miss it. Sorry, I've been, I don't know, unwell or something." But no, it's just been like MIA.
Oh, but I think you're forgetting the fact that personal responsibility in this day and age, and I sound like my mother here, personal responsibility, it's a pair of dirty words.
What are you saying? I need to mow my own lawn?
No, I'm saying that
That's a close call.
I do think you need to watch your socks though, lovey. No, I think that personal responsibility in the sense of, oh, I have a lawn mowing business. I have a client who's paid me a month in advance. Perhaps I should give them a call and just let them know that I'm going to be off for the month because I'm off in Venezuela spending all my $1 trillion notes. But no, he didn't. So that's what I meant about personal responsibility. But, quite frankly, I don't know if you want to take up lawn mowing because it could be, meditative.
Can I tell you a story about lawn mowing?
Oh, please.
It'll be quick, don't worry. My mum used to make us lawn mow when we were like from age, I think 7 or 8 or something. We used to do a lot of household chores. But my sister was mowing the backyard, and about 6 months prior, our beautiful dog Misty had died, and we buried her in the backyard.
Oh, no, please don't tell me you're going where I think you're going with this.
And so Sarah is mowing and over the shallow grave, and the lawnmower falls into the grave. And she's scarred for life because of that. This is one reason why, firstly, children should not bury their pets, and secondly, children probably shouldn't be lawn mowing for so many reasons.
And it actually brings to mind a couple of podcasts ago where you were talking about your daughter finding a beautifully crafted piece of artwork that she thought someone had so carefully put the feathers all in the right direction, the right colour, the right place, and she was actually playing with a dead bird's wings. I know it wasn't you, it was your mother-in-law, but, lordy lord.
Yeah, the journeys in this life, everyone has weird stories like that.
Can I tell you mine?
Do it.
I won't be long. I was living with my father for some time. He was struggling having 3 girls and a breakup, and, it was a pretty horrible feeling. So we had cats, and I know that the naturalists and people around were going to say how terrible this is, but none of them got doctored. So we just had more and more and more and more and more cats. It was like a crazy person's house, right? Cats everywhere. And we also had 2 dogs.
No.
One was a little yappy dog, and she stayed with us for years, but the other was a great big loping, woo, 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 nutter of a dog. And we lived in a really affluent suburb, which was strange because we were anything but, but that was, post-breakup, rowdy-row. I said I was going to keep it short, and I'm not doing a good job of it. So just giving a bit of background. So we come home from school. One dog is as dead as a doorknob.
No, sorry, I don't mean to.
Don't laugh. It's really terrible. And I'm just going to make you feel even worse. And the other dog was frothing at the mouth, and the neighbours had thrown over strychnine baited meat. The Buffy dog, he was the guts, and he'd eaten it all up. Instantly, he died a strychnine death. And our other dog, she actually went ahead and lived for a couple of years because our vet was an absolute superhero. He pumped her stomach and everything. But anyway, she actually died of liver poisoning years and years later, poor darling. But,
Oh, my God.
I know. And this was in lovely Claremont, the snotty upper class. I never want to live in those suburbs again. I know there are nice people in those suburbs, and I know there are shit people in the suburbs I live in now. But, that's just beyond horrible.
That is terrible. Let's stop talking about dead animals now. Let's talk about some good stuff, like women to the front.
Oh, don't be sexist. Oh, don't say that. Hashtag women to the front. We're just having some fun. We're not making fun of anyone. We're just wanting to make it comfy for more women to come forward. It's really okay, guys.
And this is where we welcome everyone to the Crypto Clothesline. It is about helping women join the blockchain revolution for themselves and their families.
Our names are Amy Rose Goody and Abiti Catherine Pass. We're speakers in blockchain and crypto, and we're on a mission.
We're learning together with you, talking with leading experts in the space, exploring cutting-edge technology projects that are shaping the future for our children.
And for us, I've got to say, this podcast is all about intelligence and growth, and our values are for peace, harmony, and collaboration on the planet.
Whoop, whoop. We're doing awesome stuff, and so is every other woman on the planet, raising the next generation to be developers, mathematicians, and hairdressers, and entrepreneurs, and bloody everything they want to be.
And we are not apologizing for that.
Nope.
We are providing a whole lot of free content, and we are inviting you to jump onto our Patreon link, which you'll find in the show notes, and support us that way. Like Andreas Antonopoulos, and we're not saying we're just as good as him and like him, but still, he is a person whose entire livelihood is earned through his Patreon living. So we would really welcome you to jump on and become subscribers there so that you can help support the Crypto Clothesline.
You can even just go to our website and go, you know what, I'm a bit bored today. Let me just check out Crypto Clothesline, click on the Patreon tab, and then you'll be like, holy moly, I can be like a $1 a month contributor, and I can help these ladies achieve the dreams of every crypto blockchain lady in the world.
Similarly, I could be a $25 a month contributor, and I could really get involved in some really juicy information that no one else is getting.
And also you can be on the podcast for that. So why would you not do that?
So come on, folks, jump in. We're really inviting you to contribute so that we can bring you more awesome stuff, just like we are now.
And this week we interviewed Natalyia Hearn, and she's from Crypto Chicks in the US. She also teaches children in crypto. She is an engineer. She runs hackathons.
And I just wanted to make a quick alteration there. She's actually, Crypto Chicks is based in Toronto, but she also works in the US.
All right, Canada. Before we start, I need to say one thing, because it's highly likely people are going to think that I am slightly slow in this episode because I say the word chasm instead of chasm. Maybe just towards the end of the podcast, you'll hear that fail.
But I think it's quite close to orgasm. So, you might have just been zoning out because you were thinking of other things, darling.
That's a regular problem for me.
Lucky you, girl. Lucky you. As we're saying, women are doing shit hot things around the globe. Okay. So, yeah, Natalyia is great fun. She is an engineer. She has a background in tech, and I think she wants to expand the space for more and more women to be able to come into it. We touched on the question of sexism, whether offering hackathons just to women is actually excluding men, and whether that is okay or how that's received. And we are asking that because we at the Crypto Clothesline are also receiving some pretty interesting comments about whether our Clothesline podcast is actually sexist, i.e. excluding men. Do we want to say how much we love men, Amy Rose?
I don't know. We mention it all the time. If people don't know how much, particularly me, I love men, then just listen to more of our episodes. Listen to all our episodes if you want to see how much Amy Rose loves men, and Abiti is quite fond of them too.
Now, I think it's worth mentioning here that the quarter from which this feedback came was potentially a person who hasn't listened to one single episode. So we probably shouldn't take it too seriously, but I think it's worth giving the listeners the feedback that we actually listen to what you have to say. So if you would like to tell us about the Clothesline, please jump on, send us a message, or even better, jump onto iTunes and leave us a review, preferably one with 5 stars and lots of nice bits in it. It's really useful for us to get your feedback on a regular basis. We love to hear what you think about the Clothesline. You can email us. All of those contact points will be in the show notes, and you can also find them on the website.
Let's have a listen to the interview with Natalyia. Welcome, Natalyia Hearn. You're the co-founder of Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Education for Kids and for Women at Crypto Chicks, and you're the co-founder of Link Tech Incorporated. Thanks for joining us.
I love that I got invited to be part of your show. And I actually really like the name, Crypto Clothesline. It seems like, we're kind of just did laundry and we're hanging stuff and just chatting. Is that the whole idea?
Yeah, we wanted to make something that was really friendly. Like for us, it's really important that women have got a soft space to land here. I listened to one of your interviews and I really, really share what you sort of spoke about in one of your interviews. And that was something along the lines of there is such a male dominated space. And although we love men and men are wonderful and all lots of positive things to say about that, but as a woman in the space, you can often feel like your questions are stupid, or that if you do ask a question, you get such a technical response that you cannot make hide nor hair of what they're talking about. And so we were really wanting to make a space for women to be able to learn more about it and to feel at ease, to feel that they were talking with a couple of girlfriends. So we're quite casual, we're quite informal, and we have a bit of a laugh.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, like also, many of us are mothers and, it's just talking to your little one and explaining something that you kind of take for granted and they always have, the view of it. So I kind of look at it at, I'm a techie, I'm an engineer. So for me, kind of technology is kind of been, in a way, a hobby of all my life. So certain things come easy. I taught at university engineering and I kind of realized that I really knew the subject where I could really kind of distill it and in a way dumb it down to a very simple format that anybody could understand.
Yeah.
Good on you, because that's lacking, isn't it? I feel in this space, because people get so involved in it and then they forget that they were a beginner once and the only way they were able to learn is through layman's terms. And if you're able to do that, then that is a golden nugget. And I'm going to speak to you later about that.
Absolutely. And, I sometimes find that if somebody's explaining something to you and it's not clear, I think it's because it's not really clear for them as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I also used to lecture at university, and there's nothing truer than by teaching something, you learn the content yourself, because you prepare it and you actually go deeply into it. But when you have to find language to extrapolate, somebody else can understand even the finer details of grammar or engineering or technical, whatever you're looking at. It's actually important to have that sort of sideways movement from technical language into sort of layperson's terms, so that you're not compromising the information, but you are making it digestible for everyone.
And, in a way, coming back to like stupid questions, no stupid question, because somebody may have kind of an angle on something that you may have not thought about, and it actually makes you think about subject again. Or if you're thinking you're not getting a message across, then you got to rethink how you're going to explain it for that person to understand, because we all learn in a different way. And as a kind of a teacher or somebody who has a particular knowledge in a subject, you got to find a way of transmitting that knowledge.
I was reading recently about the way that people learn, and I know that you have meetups, and I guess that's why it's probably more effective, because of that visual approach and not just opening a book. But I read that the brain can process an image or a video 60,000 times faster than it would if it was reading text. So that's 60,000 times faster looking at an image because of the retina and how it's connected to the brain and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's just a little tidbit that I was like, everyone should be learning through videos and through hands-on and going to meetups and connecting with people.
I also think that notion of connection, in a way, it's antiquated, because we have this whole digital world and we've got this to be grateful for. We've got this amazing podcast happening and this conversation happening right now. But by the same token, people are wanting to meet face to face. Loneliness is one of the biggest industries in the world right now in terms of people cashing in on other people's loneliness. We're missing that human connection. And I think it's vital to bring that back into daily interaction.
Well, it's interesting you talk about loneliness. I recently, like literally last 2 days, I read an article, and I'm trying to think what it was, that says that the loneliest kind of demographic are the young people. They seem to, like, when there was a poll done, and they looked at age categories, the loneliest category was like the, late teenage to early 20s. And they're the ones who spend the most time, on internet, on social media, and kind of learning through internet and stuff like that. It's interesting if that is really a true statistics, or they just feel it more than a 40-year-old who just got used to being lonely. I don't know. It's kind of then they polled quite a few people. So it wasn't like,
Wow.
It totally makes sense. I've heard that before as well.
I just wanted to go back to the notion of stupid questions. We will get to other things. I think that as women, we tend to have this sense that, it could be from 5,000 years of conditioning and stuff, and I'm certainly not playing the victim, but I think as women, we often feel that it's really risky to ask questions, even in regular sort of contexts. If we don't understand something, we have to fake it and pretend that we do and kind of make it up along the way. And just recently, I was being given an interview from a TV interviewer, and he said, we've spent a day and a half talking to people on the streets and asking them what is Bitcoin. And then he came in and he met my kids who were sitting there grumpily waiting for this all to be over because they were over it and they wanted to go home. And he said, "Oh, can you tell me what Bitcoin is?" And my 13-year-old son just launched into the most sort of eloquent description. And I looked at him as if to go, whoa, where did that come from? It's like we don't always know the answers to questions, and it's great to be able to ask.
Curiosity could be conditioning. A lot of it could be sort of expectations. I'm just trying to think. Culturally, we are in a really good space. We have freedom to speak. And even within that freedom, somehow we need to create environments that are comfortable enough for somebody to have a voice. I always struggle with talking about sort of stupid questions and voice. A term feminism. Early on, I just had the kind of internal kind of rebellion against that term. I was born in Soviet Union and I came to Canada when I was a child, so maybe that carries some of that. I have come to terms with my own definition, and my own definition that for me is global and it should fit in anywhere. It's a woman with a voice. So if you are a woman that has a voice, it doesn't matter if it's in your family, with your children, at a work, at a church, it doesn't matter where you are, then I would put you as a feminist, like it or not, in my definition.
Yeah, I love that definition. I love it because it's about.
I think it's also really hard to be vulnerable. And when you show that you don't know something, you're vulnerable. And humans just don't like to put themselves out there like that. But it's actually so beneficial to be vulnerable because people want to help you. Like, it's in our nature. We actually do want to help other people.
It's also very strongly related to innocence, I think. When you ask a question from an innocent perspective like a child does, I think that's where I was coming from with that other thing. When you can ask a question with innocence, then you don't have that overriding idea that, oh, I sound stupid, oh, I sound stupid.
And a part of it also, I think there's one thing in terms of even asking a question. The second part of it comes is that asking the same question 20 times until you get it. And I think that's also part of education. Education is not just transmittal of knowledge, but it's also through repetition. And oftentimes, and if you're in an environment like hard enough to ask the question once, but to ask the same question several times, I think becomes even harder.
So I think this leads in a really interesting way to what you've just completed, the New York Blockchain Hackathon and Conference. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that sounds like it was an absolute wonder world for women.
Absolutely. The whole idea really started because of what we discussed. And, we had educational seminars and meetups. And then we progressed into just doing basics, blockchain 101, how to open a wallet, different cryptocurrencies, and so on and so forth, into something that could provide women foundation to build a new career or expand their sort of existing knowledge. And hackathon was a really kind of a burst of educational energy where you could actually create that plan for women. Well, the interesting thing is that, remember, we just started saying that this is really a male-dominated sector, even more so than any tech sector I have been in. So you're looking at kind of less than 5% women kind of globally who do this kind of blockchain programming and understanding and all this kind of stuff. When we started, we thought, okay, if we get just several teams of women in the sector, this would be like really amazing thing. Well, the first all-women blockchain hackathon we had in Toronto, we ended up being oversubscribed. We had
oh my gosh, that's so wonderful.
27 teams of women. We had to turn some down because the only reason being because we had space limitations. And then we also streamed women. So the hackathon was in Toronto, but we also were streaming women from Africa and from Asia. So we kind of did a, local global event, and we had judges and we had prizes and bounties. And I think our top prize was like $3,000, and we had bounties. So, I think people not only spend time learning, but they also, got rewarded for their work at the end. And basically, the Hackathon New York was very similar to that. It was all women. Hackathon, the cool thing is that we'll bring a lot of mentors to help, and many mentors that we have some women, but we do also have guys, which is great. So there's a kind of a technology transfer that goes on. And that's kind of the whole idea of sort of teaching and learning in the process. And we also had women, She Codes Women from Israel. That's another organization that sort of we're working with. There's 50,000 women that are members of She Codes in Israel. And they are now starting to launch blockchain division of codings and to expand their sort of platform. It really is wonderful. At the end of the weekend, you see the progress and, women present what they've done. They get judged, kind of have a Shark Tank kind of, judging going on, but not as brutal. Kind Shark Tank.
More of a feminine version.
And it gives women a really good exposure to learn. It's interesting because in New York, we had 3 tracks. So we had a developer track. So if you're, a techie, but if you're not a techie and you have a business idea that you think would benefit on a blockchain, so you could have developed that idea and presented that. And we also had a regulatory track, which deals with the whole ship, information on regulation around launching, let's say, an ICO, what should be global rules for these transactions, and so on and so forth. We expanded it because it was held in New York University, their School of Law. So we added the regulatory track to attract the legal minds.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Natalyia, I was reading an article recently that did a special report on yourself, and I think it was called, I hope I've got the title right here, but Crypto Chicks Bridges Crypto Chasms Through Blockchain-Based Community Education. And you said that the answer to bridging the knowledge gaps and further optimizing blockchain tech lies in the underdeveloped talent of young learners. I'm just wondering, how do you present to kids? How are you doing this cryptocurrency education for kids thing?
It started with the fact that I realized that, there's a large percentage of kids who would not consider themselves techies, right? So let's say if we look at, how many in a classroom of high school kids that are consider themselves techies, it's probably 30% of 70. That's kind of a ballpark. How do we reach the techie ones and we kind of teach them new technologies, because that's not part of your regular education? It's really hard, legacy schools and universities to keep up with new technology. And you have a lot of bright kids go to university and drop out because they don't feel that the curriculum is actually up to speed. And I can give you that Vitalik Buterin, who is the tech founder of Ethereum, he dropped out of university, and he said it wasn't because it was, a bad university, just that it interfered with his vision of what he wanted to build, and it wasn't really adding anything to that vision, right? So we are kind of losing the upper echelon, and we are also losing that 70% who don't consider themselves techies. But that 70% that are often sort of in English and in politics are really the vocal parts. I was earlier talking about foundational technology. It's foundational technology because it will allow us to have trust without borders. And that's, I think, in humanity is the first time that we even have those 2 words in one sentence.
I had a question I wanted to ask you, and it's actually going back to the question of women. And you mentioned that there are less than 5% women globally who are developers. I recently looked at a Forbes article written by Dr. Gemma Green, and she's the co-founder of Power Ledger, a really interesting project that's come out of Fremantle where I live. And it's entitled, "We Need More Female Programmers in Blockchain." And she went on to speak about the fact that early pioneers in computer sciences were women. In the 70s, that changed because computer games were targeted at boys. The stereotype of the computer programmer was a reclusive, antisocial, eccentric male nerd. And the number of women majoring in computer science and software development began to drop. She said it went to 40% in the 90s to about 15% today.
40% in the 90s?
Yeah, she said it was close to 40% in the 90s. No, sorry, in the 80s. And now it's dropped down to about 15%. She mentioned that it's less than 9%, and you mentioned that it was roughly 5%, so they're both congruent statements. But why do you think this is so? Why do you think that women aren't more drawn to those things? Is it the stereotyping? Is it the classic women are more into communication and English and what have you? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because, I'm an engineer by training, as I said, and the number of women going into STEM and, so those statistics that you were telling me are not off of what I have seen is actually declining rather than going up. And that's kind of in developed world. So that's a question that I don't think it's necessarily stereotyping. And part of it is not just going to STEM, it's staying in technical fields. For instance, in socialist countries like Soviet Union, the number of women going into sciences was significant because of, I think, maybe of having children and stuff. Not the techie women who stayed at institutes and did development were still a fraction of the male in the same sector. So you know what? I don't have an answer to that. All I know is that blockchain has capability of affecting not just the developers and the technology sector and the finance sector, but also has an ability to transform lots of personal things that now we're starting to take less and less for granted, like privacy and ownership of our information and ownership of data and how that is used. And I think that the vocal ones who is going to stand up, they may know that things that are going on in terms of how our data is sold. Like right now, we are happy to sell all our data for a free Facebook account. That's how much we value our data. That's a reality. And same thing with all the social media out there, right? We are all have subscribed. We all have signed off our lives on daily basis of what we do and how we do it. But the problem is that if you have a voice, you have to provide an alternative solution. And oftentimes the non-techies don't have an alternative solution. They just feel something's not fair or right. So general education about blockchain as a technology should not just focus on developers, and this is coming back to kids, but also focus on what it can give you as a solution to current issues that, the young people feel are not fair.
And that draws right back into that whole question you were mentioning about the loneliness and that demographic of the teenagers, the guys that are on their devices all the time.
Absolutely. And it also gives you as a sense of fairness. And again, coming back to that trust, that you have something that you're not relying on, one person's decision and their, biases or perceived biases, that there's something that is monolithically fair. I mean, is that really the case? How the blockchain is going to evolve? Is it really immutable in a way that it can be attacked and compromised? We really don't know because it is a young technology. All we can say is that Bitcoin has not been compromised or attacked, even though many people have tried to do so.
We had an interview with Kieran Mesquita recently who talked exactly about that. He's an early Bitcoin developer, and he said that there are bugs, but they just haven't been successful yet. He was part of a team of people working on something very recently. So that was sort of enlightening. As Amy Rose said in the interview, we think that it's so unhackable, and yet the attacks are coming in. It's just a question of whether the people in the back end are obviously dealing with it to date.
Absolutely. And the attacks, people say, well, what happened to exchange and stuff like that? Well, exactly. Those were attacks into centralized areas, not the decentralized, ledger that, blockchain was intended to be originally, with the first example being Bitcoin.
Natalyia, you run regular hackathon sort of things. There's a lot of people that go into creating technology. You've got your creatives. It's not just the developers. You've got people who need to build a product as well. So people off the street are able to use it because they're the ones who are going to adopt it. I'm just wondering, at the hackathons that you run, is it just programmers that can come along, or can anyone come along and participate in developing an application or developing software?
Well, we really encourage everybody to come because you're absolutely right. The first day, what happens is that because we don't really have teams coming, we just have women come. First of all, we provide women free training prior to the hackathon. When they come in, they kind of know what to expect. They know their strengths and sort of knowledge level. And then we create teams. So they have opportunity on the first day to meet each other and think of ideas. And, somebody may come with an idea and developer may not have an idea. So you may have some bright woman coming in idea. I would like to look at how we can affect, medical data or documented refugees or, simplify how education marks and diplomas are granted. And then you have, I'm a developer. I know what would be a structure of a product like that. So I would like to work with you. So that's where the synergies really grow and come together. So you can have a business person that doesn't really have a lot of development knowledge team up with a developer, or you have somebody who is an interface to make it what a product should look like, because developers don't necessarily do that. So yeah, it really is kind of a building of synergies.
It's really like bringing different genius types together, and each one is able to shine a light on their own speciality.
Absolutely. And I think we all have talents and we all have strengths. We can be everything, and pulling those together, that your talents and strengths with somebody else's talents and strengths, really kind of interesting result, something where you add 1 + 1 = 3 rather than just 2.
I just wanted to ask you, because just recently let's call it feedback on our podcast or about our podcast, because we're largely about creating a space for women. And we got some feedback. According to this particular person, it's sexist, our approach, and it's not fair because it's not including men, it's alienating men. And I wondered, wow, with Crypto Chicks and the work that you're doing and really supporting women, do you ever get that kind of feedback, and how do you deal with it?
Absolutely, we do. So first of all, we have had men participate, so we don't turn men away. Right now, there's a huge disbalance. So if for every, let's say 5%, for every 100 men in the sector, there's 5 women. So is that fair? I don't know. The point is that, so if we even kind of move that balance from every 100 men, there's 20 women, then we kind of are doing our job. Honestly, we do not turn men away. So if men want to participate and be part of the hackathon, then that's wonderful. The other part of it, for instance, I'll give you an example. So one of our next hackathons early next year is going to be in Pakistan. And for women, we are providing free courses with Blog Geeks. So there you go, Blog Geeks are male partners.
Wow, good on you.
Absolutely. Plug for Blog Geeks because they're doing an awesome job. So the organizer came back to us and said, well, men are telling me that it's really not fair that women are getting this course for free and we're not. Or women are paying a minimal amount and we have to kind of pay full price for Blog Geeks. Globally, men have economic advantage over women. So for women, at $20 could be really something that they will not allow them to participate in the event because maybe they're taking the money away from their families or their children, right? And for men, that is less so. So we came up with a solution. And the solution was that the men basically, they could pay the same as the women, like a minimal amount, but they would have to pay double than that because it's still cheaper than paying for a Blog Geek course. And the reason being that for every man, we wanted them to sponsor a woman in Pakistan. In a very traditional society, a very traditional environment, we want to be fair, but we also want to create global fairness. And we're not asking for 50-50. We're just asking for just a little bit more room on a really packed train.
It's really important to have that resource that you're creating available for women, because the more of us that are having these resources, the more the women out there who are looking for this are able to find it. So even if it's just 1,000 women doing their thing, just even if it's little, there's like a group of us. If you turn left or right, you're likely to see one of us. That'll be more soft spaces for women to learn and to enjoy the space. I'm really excited about what you're doing.
Yeah, me too.
And well, it's also kind of links back to, you were talking earlier about your son, your 13-year-old, and he kind of went off explaining what Bitcoin was. And I said, look, we do have globally, again, more contact with kids, especially at earlier ages. And for every woman who kind of learns about this technology, there's going to be more than one child that's going to benefit directly.
That's the whole thing, yeah. We were noticing with our own kids, because I didn't turn around and specifically teach them any of that information. It wasn't like, okay, now I want you to listen to this, this, and this. But clearly they're listening to their parents' conversations. I mean, it's what we do as kids, isn't it? We learn our world through the filter of our parents. And Amy Rose's daughter is probably the most eloquent speaker on blockchain, under the age of 8 that exists. So it really is incredible how much they absorb because they're mothers. I'm not saying fathers can't teach amazing things to their kids too, but in our family's case, it's the mothers that are having these stimulating conversations, maybe with each other, and children are simply passively receiving and learning.
Absolutely. And I would say that the same on my end, sort of my kids really learned about, blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies from me. In a way, I restarted this whole thing because of my youngest son, Max. He built a mining computer, started mining, and I go, well, it's, kind of on his own steam. I mean, it had nothing to do with me. So,
oh my gosh, you must be super proud. I would be.
Before the crypto went all down, he was actually making good money every day.
Oh, well, it's a way of generating an income, whether it's good money or, sideways money. He's still learning amazing things.
Absolutely.
It's a life lesson, isn't it? Learning when to hold them and when to fold them. And if you can learn that at a young age, you are set. And maybe we'll just play a little bit of that song. You know that song?
I love that song.
You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
We're really excited about working with kids. We have a side project called Crypto and Kids, and it might be really fun to do some collaborative work together at some point. What we noticed was that, as we said, if mums and dads know about this stuff, then children know about this stuff. And that, for us, is like a portal to mass adoption. Like if children know about it and it's a no-brainer for them, then it's not going to be an issue for them to sort of, use a wallet to purchase something as opposed to, using a credit card. So when I say a wallet, I'm talking about a digital wallet, obviously on a phone or something. So what is your idea about cryptocurrencies and blockchain becoming mainstream, becoming available to the masses?
Well, I think we're already really are in sort of digital economy. The engine underneath digital economy is what we're really talking about. And that engine really may affect foundational aspects of how we operate as a society because we do not need centralized authority to create the trust. I am looking to approach this with children and encourage them to understand the concept is actually starting with the concept of trust and what that means to them. It comes innately, I think, initially because children trust their parents and they're completely heartbroken if their trust is broken one way or the other. In developed societies, all our systems work really well, so we don't really have to deal with trust or the concept of trust very much. But in many parts of the world, in Russia, the valuation of money happened several times in the last sort of 100 years. And so people don't trust systems. They don't really trust money. I mean, it's happening in Argentina today and, in Venezuela. So part of it is understanding what that means. And because I think the next generation is the generation that's really going to develop the aspects of this technology. We're just kind of, as I said in the beginning, we're still really, really young. We don't have all the answers. The answers will come from our children and their children, but they have to have a stepping stone on which they can build those answers. So I'm not really approaching it really technically. I'm almost approaching it from a philosophical, spiritual level because it's a feeling that you have. I mean, when we talk about fairness, we kind of all know what's fair and what isn't fair. So I'm trying to make it wider. I'm trying to make it less technical and more global. Technology will try to fit into that feeling to make it sound.
Making sure that people have something simple, layman's terms, I guess analogies also are really handy, but no one is going to jump on board if it's all techie. That's what I've learned. It's just overwhelmed, too hard, see you later. This is crazy.
It needs an easy interface, doesn't it? A user interface. It's got to be as easy as the credit card system or something where you just literally tap and go.
You know what? We're not that far off from that. The part that I think is harder is that you kind of have to rely on yourself to make sure that your money is safe. It's kind of like I sort of give an example of carrying cash in your wallet. If you drop your wallet somewhere, you lose it. You lose the cash.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be responsible for your wallet.
That's a good one.
Yeah, very simple and straightforward.
Because people are like, oh, cryptocurrency is so risky because as soon as you lose your wallet, you've lost all your, like, well, duh, if you lose anything, you've lost it. That's actually how the world works. If you lose your car in the car park, like, it's probably gone. If you look around for like 6 hours. I'm not saying I've done that, just saying.
And you know what? You can have fund managers who lose part of your wealth because they invested incorrectly. And you don't have any recourse to that either.
Yeah.
So it's not that banks are, proof or existing institutions. What about a financial crisis in 2007 and 8, where banks had to be bailed out? I mean, look, it's not a coincidence that Bitcoin really was launched at that time because there was loss of trust in institutions that we thought were unbreakable.
Natalia, in this moment in Australia, we have the Royal Banking Commission going on, and pretty much half of the Commonwealth Bank, which is one of the major 4 banks within Australia, and of course they're copying it, but the other banks are all doing something similar, I'm sure. They all, in theory, should have ended up in prison by now for what they've been charging people who've been dead 10 years.
Wow.
Insurance. There's all sorts of things, really shocking things that they've been ripping people off. I think we can see loud and clear that the banks are not necessarily trust vehicles. However, we're so used to them, and it's the habits that are deeply, deeply etched into the minds of human beings. It really takes time to move those thought processes over to something fresh and new.
This is why starting with kind of immediate next generation, I think, is going to have the most impact in changing that mindset.
Yeah. When you mentioned the devaluation of the currency in Russia various times over the last 100 years, and you mentioned Venezuela, I have a picture in front of me of a $100 trillion note, a legitimate one from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. We had a cocktail party recently called Get Your Block Off. It was just a bit of fun. And a friend of ours brought along a whole wad of $100 trillion legal currency from Zimbabwe.
It's actually interesting talking about that. When Zimbabwe recently was going through this sort of crisis, there's kind of the exchange rate for cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, and then there is kind of black market rates for Bitcoin. So at the time, I think Bitcoin was $8,000, and in Zimbabwe, you had to pay something like $13, $14 to get it.
Whoa.
Yeah, so no wonder, because those pieces of paper have no value at all.
The printing of the paper would cost more than the perceived or, the apparent value.
It's a bit like toilet paper, I guess.
That's probably got more value.
Yeah. Well, Natalia, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure. Before we go, we do like to ask you one last, usually scary question. Our guests get a little bit uncomfortable because we haven't prepped them. But do you have a favorite quote or a mantra or something that you want to share?
I have an older son who lives in Sweden, and he's doing a PhD in materials engineering. He's engaged and he's about to get married. And there's a good Russian saying is that a word is not a bird. If you let it out, you won't be able to catch it. How is that for the end of an interview?
Oh, there were so many words shared today. And is that because you've got a son who's living far away from home and you're feeling sad about that?
No, I think we were talking about him getting married and relationship, and he's living with his fiance, who was wonderful and all this kind of stuff. But it's also the dynamics of learning how to live together. So I was just telling him is that, sometimes it's better to say less and digest things before you spit it all out.
Oh, that's a tough lesson. That's a quote we should use as well.
That is a very good one. Natalia, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope that we can, work together down here. I think it would be so, so special to bring your hackathons down to Australia and create something in the Antipodes as well. Pakistan's closer.
Well, actually, you know what? I think we are talking about this. My, co-founders, Ethereum is going to have at some point an event in Australia. And because of that, we're thinking that we may do All Women's Hackathon right before the Ethereum conference. I know when the dates are. I would love to get your help and input and how to do this.
Oh, I'm in. I've just taken all my clothes off. I'm jumping in.
What's more, I think you're going to need some pretty cool media partners. So just saying, you might want us there.
We would absolutely love to do that. Also, I've heard that you've got a really cool techie female community. Canada is kind of a mining country, and so is Australia. I have quite a bit of mining experience in my life, so I kind of hold that dear to my heart. And I'm not talking about crypto mining.
I was going to say.
Talking about natural resources. One of the reasons I started talking to JP is actually because there's a company that we're working with that kind of is bridging the real mining and blockchain technology. And that's how I got introduced to two of you. JP was mentioning that she's in an area where you go to a playground and the kids are playing and mothers are talking about crypto and blockchain. And I thought that is so cool.
Yeah, that was part of our story because we actually thought it was normal, but we'd be standing around in the playground, at school or whatever, and there'd be a mum with a kid on a hip and another parent sort of watching somebody on the monkey bars and going, oh, have you heard what ETH is up to this week? Oh my God, da, 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 da. And then we sort of, had conversations outside of that context and went, oh, not everyone's talking about this. Which is also why we were so excited about making the podcast, the Crypto Clothesline, because we wanted this to be accessible to more mums in more playgrounds with more pooey nappies to deal with.
Wonderful. This has been so much fun.
It has been fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Natalia.
Thank you both. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we can talk again.
Me too. We've got so much in common.
That's wonderful. We'll be in touch for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was a really cool conversation with Natalia. We kind of jumped back and forth between different subjects, as women do, sitting around having a cup of coffee. What a generous spirit. And I'm really thrilled about the hackathon that's about to happen in Pakistan.
Me too. I'm surprised it's in Pakistan. I haven't been there, but I do know that the world, when it comes to tech, is quite male-dominated. I'm surprised that it's happening in Pakistan because of what I've heard about the role of women in that particular country.
I think that's especially interesting. I myself have had experience in Pakistan, traveling there under quite sort of extreme circumstances. And I arrived there without a burqa. I was carrying blood illegally and had a pair of trousers on.
Did you say you were carrying blood illegally?
Yes, it's a long story and probably not one that I want to go into here. But yeah, it was when my husband passed away and he was in Pakistan. And before he passed, he needed a blood transfusion and they couldn't find anyone with his blood type. So that's why I was carrying his blood from an Italian hospital into Pakistan, carrying it on dry ice and all that sort of thing. You'd be amazed. We have led interesting lives.
Yeah, I think so.
So my experience with Pakistan comes with quite a broken heart. However, I've got to say, from a personal perspective, I had beautiful, beautiful treatment, both from men and women there. However, I think that it would be fair to say that men have a dominating role in the space in terms of having a voice. As Natalia mentioned, I loved her version of feminism, that all women have a voice.
I would love to be a fly on the wall at that hackathon, I tell you what.
I would actually really love to go. I was considering while she was speaking, I was thinking I wonder if we can go across as media partners. I don't know that you'd be wanting to, but I would be willing to go across there and to cover that. I think that would be an amazing gift to see that transformation in a country which is not necessarily connected with tech and women in tech especially.
I think you should get on that plane. You love it?
Well, it might be a healing thing too, because my association with Pakistan obviously is one that comes with quite a bit of grief, but that was some years ago now, so maybe it's time to see it through new eyes.
I think that you'll be quite busy when you're over there as well. You'll have a chance to move through and to experience new things, so why not?
Yeah, and I probably won't wear trousers this time because it was a pretty strange look walking into the arrivals lounge dressed with no burqa, no skirt and trousers. But anyway, whatever.
You live and you learn.
Yeah, I was in a hurry. I jumped on that plane in Milan in a bit of a hurry, so I wasn't thinking too much about the cultural implications on the other end.
Well, when I went to Dubai, you can get arrested if you're a woman and you show a certain amount of skin over there. And I prepped because, you have to have like sleeves and all that sort of thing. So there are countries out there that you seriously do need to consider your wardrobe before you walk in there, and as like a respect thing, but you wouldn't have had any time or capacity to think about that sort of thing.
So the work that Natalyia is doing and the fact that she's working in such culturally sensitive areas, it just shows such incredible courage and wisdom and foresight.
I don't think we got to the bottom of how she actually got into all this, because we heard about all the things that she's doing. I would really love to catch up with her again and just to uncover how the hell did this woman go from being a computer engineer or anything, but to being the crypto chicks lady and doing all of these amazing things.
Yeah, because she mentioned that she had an engineering background, and she also mentioned that she was associated with the mining industry. So that is a really good question. Maybe we could actually get her to write us a quick paragraph so we can include that in the blog.
Yeah, I think we should.
Well, until next week, I shall catch you round like a carter.
See you around like the round earth, which might be flat.
Oh dear, flat earthers.
Hi, you've called a BT.
And Amy Rose.
At Crypto.
Clothesline.
Leave a message after the
Beep.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Ready?
I've heard you ladies refer to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as being the future of money or the money of the future. Really depends on which version you prefer. I personally think that you might be slightly confused. It's true that we have, changed from paying cash and checks for things and then having the plastic fantastic with the credit card. But the idea that you open up an app on your phone and, pay for something with your wallet on your phone, which is actually not a paper wallet, but it's an electronic wallet stored on your phone, and you then go and scan a QR code. I mean, which language are you speaking? It is simply not going to happen. It's too difficult for people to use one phone, press it up against another screen to scan a QR code. I just simply don't understand the language.
Crypto